My sister tried to take over my beach house for the summer, listed it on Airbnb behind my back, and called me cruel when I changed the locks. She arrived with the whole family, and got the shock of her life. My sister attempted to commandeer my beach house for the entire summer, posted it on Airbnb without my knowledge, and labeled me cruel when I changed every lock. She arrived with the entire family in tow. So I contacted the authorities, had her vehicle towed, and watched her public meltdown become internet famous. Listen, my family has always operated under the assumption that my possessions were communal property. So I established boundaries, constructed a life I took pride in, and stepped away. But apparently, the word no wasn't in their dictionary. Before I dive into the absolute circus that unfolded, let me provide some context. I'm Karen Mitchell, 42 years old, a senior financial analyst based in Charleston, South Carolina. After 15 years of grueling hours, sacrificed holidays, and disciplined saving, I finally purchased my dream beach house on the North Carolina coast, a charming 3-bedroom cottage with a wraparound porch and direct ocean access. It represents my reward for years of relentless work and living proof that patience yields results. My parents live 2 hours away and have always assumed they'd have unlimited access to it. My younger sister, Brenda, 36, describes herself as a lifestyle influencer, which essentially translates to unemployed. She's entitled, irresponsible, and endlessly praised by our parents while I receive reminders to check in on her. I've rescued her countless times. Rent payments, maxed out credit cards, emergencies that mysteriously turn into tropical getaways, and she's never reimbursed a single dollar. Then one ordinary Thursday afternoon, sandwiched between 2 conference calls, my phone illuminated with a text that seemed like an elaborate joke. Brenda, we are claiming your beach house for the summer. I stared at the screen. We are claiming. Not requesting. Not suggesting. Claiming. I assumed autocorrect had massacred something, but then I accessed the family group message thread. It was absolute pandemonium. Mom responded with an avalanche of heart emojis. Dad typed, "Excellent. Family time is long overdue." My cousin added, "I'm booking plane tickets tomorrow." Everyone behaved as though I'd just volunteered my property for a complimentary vacation. Then Brenda shared a Google spreadsheet. This wasn't a joke. It was a comprehensive itinerary. Room assignments, shopping lists, daily activities, even a no-smoking policy that didn't exist. The master bedroom, my bedroom, was designated ours. I composed a diplomatic message. "Hey everyone, I'm pleased you're excited, but you need to ask permission before planning anything. I'll be using the beach house this summer." The responses materialized almost instantaneously. "Mom, family should share, Karen." "Dad, don't create difficulties. It's just property." "Brenda, you're barely there anyway. We'll maintain it better." Several hours later, Brenda uploaded a beach aesthetic board to her Instagram stories. Every photograph, the deck, the outdoor shower, the kitchen, originated from my property. The caption declared, "Our coastal summer begins soon. #BeachHouseVibes #FamilyGoals." Then arrived a calendar invitation titled Beach House Preparation Cleaning, July 5th. The description stated, "Please ensure the property is spotless before our arrival." It was transmitted from Brenda's business email. Apparently, I wasn't merely the owner. I was now the housekeeping staff as well. I scrolled through the messages again. They weren't joking. My cousin inquired whether he could bring his Rottweiler, the identical animal that demolished my outdoor furniture 2 Thanksgivings ago. My aunt was coordinating a 4th of July seafood boil on my deck. Brenda's fiancé volunteered to handle maintenance, as if he was assuming property management responsibilities. Not a solitary person had requested permission. They had collectively determined that because we share genetics, I was obligated to surrender the one thing I'd earned entirely independently. This wasn't simply entitlement. It was complete delusion. I didn't bother responding again. Instead, I began capturing screenshots of everything. The group conversation, the spreadsheet, the Instagram story, even the cleaning schedule. If this ever required documentation, I wanted a comprehensive digital record. That evening, while the group continued orchestrating our summer, I accessed my company's portal and submitted a vacation request for early July and the following week. It received approval within minutes. I reclined in my chair. This wasn't about a beach house. It was about boundaries. And for 42 years, mine had been treated like mere suggestions. But this situation was different. This wasn't just a casual favor or a few $100s. This was the one thing I'd worked relentlessly to achieve, being treated like community property. They were planning an entire summer vacation in a location they didn't own without so much as an inquiry. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to explain why this was unacceptable. I'd invested too many years explaining things to people who had zero interest in listening. Instead, I made a decision. I'd allow them to come. Let them pack their vehicles, load the coolers, and drive 5 hours north. Let them arrive at the gravel driveway with their beach towels and their elaborate family plans. And when they reached the front entrance, they'd discover it locked tighter than Fort Knox. They wanted me to be the antagonist. Fine. I'd assume the role, but this time I'd be directing the narrative. That night, I archived the conversation and silenced it. They could continue planning their fantasy summer. They had no idea I was planning something too. The season was going to be unforgettable, just not for the reasons they imagined. I didn't stumble upon the beach house by accident. It was the product of 15 years spent executing the work most people avoid, the kind that doesn't generate headlines or Instagram followers. While others were planning destination bachelorette parties or cultivating online personas, I was constructing financial models and surviving on black coffee. After graduate school, I started as a junior analyst at a mid-sized investment firm. Entry-level financial analysis meant examining endless balance sheets, projecting quarterly earnings, and composing reports senior partners barely acknowledged. But I excelled at it. Sufficiently skilled to earn promotions faster than most. I accepted consulting contracts independently, developing market analysis for startups and executing valuation projects during evenings. Every additional dollar was allocated between two spreadsheets I updated religiously: Freedom Fund for savings and Surviving for everything else. Vacations? None. Weekends? Predominantly spent analyzing spreadsheets and financial statements. By 35, I was directing a department and negotiating six-figure contracts. By 38, I had accumulated sufficient savings to begin house hunting. At 40, the beach house was mine. Brenda's career trajectory looked different. She'd attempted at least 8 different business ventures, all financed by parental subsidies and my reluctant Venmo transfers. There was the handmade jewelry enterprise that never progressed beyond the Etsy planning stage. The wellness brand that launched with 3 Instagram posts and collapsed within a month. The organic skincare line she promoted at Christmas, which according to her failed because people don't appreciate authentic products. Her emergencies were never genuine emergencies. Once she contacted me sobbing that her landlord was initiating eviction proceedings. I transferred $1,500 that evening, only to observe photographs of her in Miami 3 days later. Another occasion, she claimed she needed assistance covering urgent dental work. It proved to be a $400 teeth whitening session and a weekend at a luxury spa. Our parents never perceived a problem. When Brenda got intoxicated and missed work, Mom characterized it as exhaustion. When she posted selfies from bottle service tables, Dad commended her networking abilities. My promotions? A nod. Perhaps a text message. Brenda's half-formed projects? Champagne celebrations in the dining room and speeches about her entrepreneurial spirit. I'd been documenting every dollar. $18,000 over the initial decade, but in the last 3 years alone, I'd contributed another $12,000. Her emergencies were becoming more frequent and more expensive. The total exceeded $30,000 now, and she'd never reimbursed a cent. The beach house was supposed to represent where all that terminated, a physical boundary between the person who always rescued everyone and the woman who finally prioritized herself. But judging by the group conversation, Brenda didn't perceive it that way. I wasn't entirely isolated in my coastal neighborhood. Down the street resided Mr. Harrison, a retired Navy captain with the temperament of a military manual. He lived 4 houses down and noticed everything: license plates, disturbances, who positioned their garbage receptacles out prematurely. The type of neighbor you either resented or appreciated. I appreciated him. When he mentioned struggling to navigate online grocery ordering, I configured his account and repaired his outdated internet router. In exchange, he committed to monitoring things when I was absent. Then there was Patricia, the Homeowners Association president. She treated the neighborhood regulations like constitutional law. Lawn excessively long? Expect a warning. Incorrect trash collection day? Fine forthcoming. Most people found her insufferable. I didn't. In fact, I knew I'd be grateful for someone like her once Brenda, and company inevitably began treating the beach house like a resort. I'd spent years convincing myself that family was family. But the situation with the beach house wasn't nonsense. It was theft disguised as togetherness. They weren't planning a family getaway. They were planning a hostile acquisition. And I was finished pretending they had the authority. The screenshots I preserved from the group conversation told the complete story. Brenda assigning bedrooms like a resort coordinator. My aunt inquiring whether the Wi-Fi was adequate for her husband to work remotely. My cousin claiming one of the paddle boards for morning workouts. The entitlement was so casual it almost appeared choreographed. I scrolled through the ledger again that evening. $30,000. 15 years of excuses. 15 years of I'll reimburse you next month. 15 years of being the emergency fund, the chauffeur, the therapist, and the safety net. I wasn't their sister. I was a subscription service, Family Plus Premium. Unlimited bailouts, no refunds. But that subscription was being terminated permanently. This time, the narrative wasn't going to follow the usual pattern, me sighing, capitulating, and pretending it didn't affect me. This time, they were going to encounter a wall. Not just a locked door, a firm, legal, well-documented, bulletproof wall. The next chapter of my life, and theirs, was about to commence. And for once, I wasn't the one financing it. I departed Charleston before sunrise, the back seat loaded with tools, equipment, and sufficient caffeine to power a small city. The drive to the North Carolina coast was 6 hours of empty highways and excessive time to think. Most people plan road trip playlists. I planned contingency checklists. By the time I crossed the state line, I had a complete mental blueprint. Cameras, locks, alarms, documentation, every possible angle covered. They wanted to treat my beach house like a complimentary resort. Fine. I was going to treat it like a fortress. When I arrived at the Shell driveway just after noon, the property looked as tranquil as ever. The ocean was calm, the sea oats were swaying, and for a brief moment, I almost felt guilty. Then I remembered the group conversation, the Instagram posts, and the cleaning schedule Brenda transmitted for my own property. Guilt evaporated. The next 4 days were entirely business. The first priority was surveillance. I hired a local security company to install motion-activated cameras covering every approach, the front entrance, rear deck, driveway, and both sides of the house. Each feed streamed directly to my phone with instant notifications. Next came access control. I replaced every standard lock with smart locks programmed exclusively to my phone and fingerprint. The old keys Brenda and my parents still possessed were now useless metal. On every window and door, I installed sensors that would alert me if they were opened or tampered with. The security company recommended an alarm system loud enough to wake the entire neighborhood. I agreed immediately. It connected directly to local police dispatch if triggered. No phone call, no delay. I added layers they wouldn't even consider. Smart lighting that activated and deactivated randomly at night to make the house appear occupied. Indoor sound sensors that would log any significant audio spikes, useful if I needed HOA evidence later. A small placard was positioned in the front window. No authorization, no entry. All access monitored. Then I indulged in a bit of pettiness. I ordered a custom doormat that declared, "Welcome to Paradise. By invitation only." It wasn't necessary, but it felt satisfying. The documentation came next. I scanned and backed up everything: deed, insurance, HOA regulations, and the relevant North Carolina trespass statutes, into a folder labeled evidence. One copy existed on my laptop, another in the cloud, and a printed version went into a locked cabinet inside the house. Before I departed, I composed and printed a dated letter addressed to whom it may concern, and secured it to the inside of the front window. It stated in clear legal language that any unauthorized entry would be considered trespassing, and that the property was under video surveillance. It wasn't dramatic. It was documentation. Another breadcrumb for when this inevitably escalated. On my way out, I stopped by Mr. Harrison's porch. The retired Navy captain was drinking coffee and examining a nautical chart. I briefed him concisely, no drama, and requested a favor. If you observe anyone at the property who shouldn't be there or anything that appears suspicious, would you mind contacting me or the police if it's urgent? He didn't ask many questions. Just nodded and provided me his number on a business card. I'm awake early most mornings anyway. I'll keep watch. I believed him. Men like Harrison don't make commitments they won't honor. The house itself wasn't the only component of the plan. The moment I checked the mailbox, I discovered a business card wedged between bills. Coastal Dreams Rentals. We transform homes into income. That was a red flag. I had no proof Brenda was behind it, but the timing was too perfect. I sent the company a certified letter stating explicitly that I did not consent to any listings, subleasing, or rental representation of my property. That was another document for the file. Then I made several proactive calls. First, the local police department. I introduced myself, explained the situation briefly, and requested the best non-emergency contact number. The officer on duty appreciated the heads up. If anyone appears claiming they have authority to be there, we'll take it seriously, he assured me. Next stop, the HOA's monthly neighborhood meeting. Patricia, the president, was delighted to see me. She spent 20 minutes discussing how strict they were about short-term rentals. I confirmed I didn't rent and mentioned I was concerned about unauthorized occupants. She assured me the board would contact police if anyone appeared claiming to stay without my permission. Perfect. The final touch was programming the doorbell camera. Anytime it detected motion near the front entrance, it would automatically play a brief message through the speaker. This property is under video surveillance. Unauthorized entry is prohibited. I tested it by approaching the steps. The message activated immediately, crisp and clear. Perfect. By the end of the fourth day, the house was secured tighter than a bank vault. If they appeared uninvited, they'd face a mountain of evidence stacked against them. Before heading back to Charleston, I walked through the house one final time. Everything looked perfect. Blinds closed, sensors armed, camera lights blinking. I stepped onto the deck and stared out over the water, calm and still, knowing this peace wouldn't last long. Back in the driveway, I retrieved my phone and silenced the family group conversation. I didn't need to observe their vacation plans anymore. The only notifications I left active were the motion alerts from the security system. If they came, I'd know. And when they did, they'd learn something my family had never been forced to learn before. I started the car and headed south, leaving the beach house behind. The next move was theirs. I was prepared for it. By late June, the family's fantasy had fully metastasized. The group conversation was overflowing with packing lists, meal plans, and debates over whether they should repaint my deck furniture. Brenda posted a reel with the caption, "Officially summering at our beach house," using photographs from her single visit. Then on June 23rd, a colleague sent me a link to an Airbnb listing. Charming oceanfront cottage, sleeps 10. My address. My photographs. My furniture. I didn't waste a second. I filed a fraud report with Airbnb, notified the HOA and local police, and added the screenshots to my evidence folder. 12 days later, July 5th, the Saturday of holiday weekend, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. 3 vehicles rolled into my driveway like a convoy. Mom and Dad's Suburban, Brenda's white Range Rover, and my cousin's minivan stuffed with children, coolers, and inflatable pool floats. The camera feed displayed folding chairs, portable grills, and suitcases. They weren't planning a weekend visit. They were planning an occupation. Brenda strutted up to the front entrance in oversized sunglasses, retrieving the old key I'd given her years ago. She inserted it into the lock and twisted. Nothing. She attempted again, jiggling it harder. Still nothing. She stepped back, exhaled loudly, and muttered, "She must have installed it incorrectly." As if I'd forgotten how locks function. Then she retrieved her phone and made a call. Within 20 minutes, a white van arrived. A locksmith she'd clearly arranged in advance. Before he could approach the door, I activated the doorbell speaker. "This is the property owner. Do not touch those locks." The locksmith froze mid-motion, stood upright, and walked back to his van. "Yeah, I'm not touching that," he muttered before driving away. Brenda shouted at the disappearing van in frustration. That's when the genuine desperation commenced. Brenda circled the house, peering through windows and testing sliders. Derek, her fiancé, attempted prying open the storage shed door. My phone illuminated with one motion alert after another. I composed a brief message in the family group conversation. You are trespassing. This property is under video surveillance. North Carolina General Statute 14 to 159.12 applies. Timestamp, 2:47 p.m. Minutes later, Mr. Harrison walked past with his dog, glancing at the chaos and then up at the cameras. He gave a brief nod before continuing. It was reassuring to know there was a witness. Then I received an alert from my utility company. Someone had reported a fabricated power outage to gain access. I contacted immediately, secured my account with a passcode, and the representative flagged it as fraud. Approximately 45 minutes later, I received an email from Patricia at the HOA. There had been a noise complaint about loud music, illegally parked vehicles, and suspicious activity. She had already visited the property. According to her, Brenda claimed they were the owners. When Patricia requested proof, Brenda had none. A formal warning was issued and copied to me. I decided that was sufficient. I contacted the local police non-emergency line, calmly explained the situation, and requested an officer be dispatched. Within 25 minutes, 2 patrol vehicles arrived. Officers Rodriguez and Thompson stepped out and were immediately met with a performance. Mom crying. Dad attempting to appear reasonable. Brenda shouting about family rights. They claimed it was a misunderstanding. The officers contacted me, and I emailed them the property deed, screenshots, and a signed electronic trespass affidavit. When the officers informed them they had to depart, Brenda completely lost control. She screamed that this was abuse, that the house was community property, that they had a right to be there. Officer Thompson requested to see her phone, which she had left unlocked. And there it was, the fraudulent Airbnb listing still active. Adjacent to it was a spreadsheet titled Room Assignments with my master bedroom labeled Ours. The officers made it clear, if they didn't leave immediately, they could face criminal trespass charges. Dad, perspiring and humiliated, attempted to negotiate, suggesting they just stay for the weekend. The officers didn't budge. Within 20 minutes, they were loading their possessions back into the vehicles, grumbling about returning with an attorney. Then Karma decided to intervene. Less than an hour after they departed, Mr. Harrison texted me. Police had established a routine holiday safety checkpoint down the road. Brenda's Range Rover got stopped. Expired registration. She went live on Instagram from the roadside, mascara running, claiming I had contacted ahead to have her stopped, as if I had police on speed dial and could arrange a checkpoint on a public highway. The comments were divided between OMG, that's abuse, and girl, you just forgot to renew your tags. I couldn't help but laugh. The universe didn't need my assistance. It had its own system. The silence didn't last long. Within 24 hours of being escorted from my property, Brenda was back online. Except this time, the performance had a new platform. Her Instagram stories transformed into a rant series, each one more dramatic than the previous. I was now greedy, emotionally abusive, and corrupted by wealth. She posted a slideshow of photographs of my beach house, claiming I'd locked my own family out of their vacation home. Her followers, who mostly consisted of friends still living with their parents, consumed it eagerly. She doubled down with a caption that declared, "Some people allow money to change them. Some people forget family matters more than property." She conveniently omitted the part where she attempted to break into said property, and listed it on Airbnb. The comments flooded in, people calling me selfish, cold, controlling. I didn't respond. Screenshots were sufficient. The smear campaign didn't stop there. Several days later, my supervisor forwarded me an email from someone with my mother's name. It was addressed directly to the company. In it, she suggested I might be struggling with anger management issues and unresolved family trauma that could affect my workplace behavior. My supervisor's message above the forwarded email was simple. Thought you should see this. I'm not concerned, but HR flagged it. I wrote back immediately, calm and concise. I explained the situation, the attempted trespassing, the police involvement, the false claims online, and attached the documentation, police report number, screenshots of Brenda's posts, the fraudulent Airbnb listing, and the trespass affidavit. I concluded with a request that any further communication from my family be directed to HR directly. My supervisor replied less than an hour later. Understood. You're fine. Honestly, impressive documentation. That was the last time my family's attempts to sabotage my career even registered. They had attempted to make me appear unstable. Instead, they provided me another opportunity to demonstrate how controlled and prepared I was. Next, I decided to establish a legal boundary. I downloaded a cease and desist template. I sent 2 letters. The first went to Brenda. Stop the defamatory posts. Remove my property images. Cease the fraud attempts. The second went to my mother. Do not contact my employer again under any circumstances, or future incidents will be treated as harassment and referred to legal counsel. Both were sent certified mail. Both were delivered within 4 days. Neither responded. Meanwhile, Patricia from the HOA proved more useful than I expected. She filed a noise violation for the driveway music incident and an official note about attempted unauthorized occupancy. In her report, she included that Brenda had falsely claimed ownership and refused to leave when asked. It wasn't just neighborhood gossip anymore. It was a documented pattern of behavior. Even the community itself seemed to support my position. One afternoon, I received a handwritten note in the mail. It was from Mr. Harrison. Observed the entire situation. It stated in block letters. Apologize you're experiencing this. You're in the right. Don't allow them to intimidate you. It was a small thing, but it mattered. Having an impartial witness who'd observed their behavior firsthand would assist if things escalated further. But Brenda wasn't finished playing the victim. On Facebook, she composed a post accusing me of weaponizing the legal system against my own blood. She claimed the police had humiliated them on our property. My aunt commented that I had forgotten where I came from. Distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years started contributing their opinions. One even messaged me privately to say I was overreacting and should allow family to use the place occasionally. I didn't respond to any of them. Every word they posted went straight into a growing evidence folder titled Family Defamation Attempts. In the family group conversation, things deteriorated. Brenda's messages shifted from angry to unhinged. One stated, "We are consulting an attorney. We are going to get legal access to our beach house." Another said, "This isn't finished. We have rights." I couldn't help but laugh when I read that one. "I'd love to see the deed with your name spelled delusional," I muttered to myself. They could threaten all they wanted. The law was on my side. The documentation was airtight. And their every public misstep was another piece of evidence in my favor. The smear campaign wasn't about winning. It was pressure, guilt, drama, manipulation, the family's usual playbook. But not this time. I stayed quiet. I stayed steady. And every angry post, every baseless threat, every attempt to drag my name through the mud just made my case stronger. The fallout wasn't hurting me. It was burying them. They had gone from family bonding trip to police warnings, fraud reports, HOA violations, and defamation letters in less than a month. And while they were busy spinning their narrative online, I was busy building an unshakable wall of evidence. One that would ensure their next attempt at overstepping ended even faster than the first. They'd wanted to make this about family. I was making it about facts. And facts, unlike feelings, hold up in court. Life returned to normal after the chaos. And for the first time in months, normal actually felt good. Back in Charleston, I slipped into a routine I hadn't realized I missed. Mornings started with yoga instead of angry texts. Evenings were focused on client presentations instead of family drama. Weekends were split between hiking trails and quiet solo drives to the beach house, where I could finally enjoy the silence I'd worked so hard to protect. I kept the family group conversation muted, but I still checked it periodically, not out of curiosity, but to document anything foolish. The posts were still coming. Cryptic quotes about greed, vague posts about betrayal, and the occasional conspiracy theory that I had stolen the house. All of it went into the evidence folder. Then the next move came, and it was uglier than before. One Wednesday morning, I got an alert from my electric company. Someone had attempted to add a second account at my beach house address under a slightly misspelled version of my name. The representative said they'd been provided my birth date, which Brenda knew, and claimed they were moving into the guest cottage. I shut it down immediately, added a passcode to the account, and filed a fraud report. The company flagged the attempt and sent me a formal notice. I saved it under Exhibit, Utility Scam. 3 days later, I received a text from an unfamiliar number. Hey, there was a misunderstanding with some paperwork about the house. Sorry if that caused issues. I archived it without responding. A week later, a man called claiming Brenda had hired him off Craigslist to pressure wash the deck. Said she'd sent him $400 via Venmo as a deposit and promised the remainder when he arrived. I'm outside the property now, he said, but the door's locked and she's not answering. I told him directly, I'm the owner. No one hired you. If you step on that property, you're trespassing. He went quiet for a moment, then muttered, Yeah, I figured this smelled suspicious. He disconnected. I checked my cameras. Sure enough, a beat-up pickup truck was idling in the driveway. He departed 3 minutes later. I never discovered if Brenda actually sent him money or if he was involved. Either way, I sent him a screenshot of the property deed with a warning. He didn't return. Their next attempt was more audacious. One Saturday evening, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the property. Brenda's Range Rover was parked illegally at the public beach access point down the road. The camera feed showed her dragging a cooler and portable speaker across the sand toward the property line. My sound sensor started pinging within the hour. Music, shouting, laughter. She wasn't breaking into the house this time. She was throwing a party at the public access point adjacent to my property. I made one call to the HOA and another to the County Beach Patrol. Within 50 minutes, officers were on site. They issued citations for noise violations, trespassing on private property, and illegal parking. Later that night, Mr. Harrison texted me again. Brenda had driven to the public boat launch and attempted to back a borrowed trailer into the water without a permit, blocking the entire ramp. Harbour Patrol towed her Range Rover within 25 minutes. Online, she spun the story differently. She's targeting me, she wrote. She called the cops on her own family. The following weekend, they attempted again, this time with fireworks. I was monitoring the camera feeds when Mr. Harrison texted me. They're setting up rockets by the shore. Fireworks are heavily restricted near the beach, and Harrison didn't hesitate to report it. Police arrived before they could ignite a single fuse. The fireworks were confiscated and fines were issued on the spot. Meanwhile, the Airbnb investigation finally paid off. I received a confirmation email from the company. The fraudulent listing had been removed, the host account flagged, and a warning issued. They thanked me for preventing a potential illegal booking. I downloaded the email as a PDF and saved it under New Evidence label, Exhibit, Fantasy Property Manager. After that, the family's energy started to fade. The threats in the group conversation slowed down, replaced by complaints and vague attempts at guilt. My parents, who had once defended Brenda's every move, seemed to be running out of excuses. My mom eventually emailed me. No emotional blackmail, no dramatic language. Just, can we speak? I replied with a single sentence. I will only communicate in writing and only about logistics, not feelings. She didn't respond for a week. When she finally did, it was just to say, understood. Each failed attempt was another brick in the wall. The utility fraud attempt, the fake contractor job, the illegal party, the fireworks, the towing. Each move showed just how far they were willing to go, and how much further I was prepared to push back. By mid-August, the storm had passed. I drove up to the beach house for the first time since the chaos began. The air was crisp, the water still. The cameras blinked steadily from their mounts, and the locks hummed when I opened the door. Nothing was out of place. I spent the weekend exactly how I'd imagined when I bought the place. Paddleboarding at sunrise, reading on the deck, grilling dinner as the sun descended. There was no shouting, no entitlement, no drama. Just peace. Before leaving, I checked the camera feed one last time from the deck. The property looked exactly as it should, untouched, secure, and completely mine. I stared straight into one of the cameras and smiled. Still mine, I said quietly. They had attempted to take over my life, my property, and my peace. And one by one, I'd taken everything back, without raising my voice, without losing control, and without compromising. They had burned every bridge they built. And I'd watched every single one collapse under the weight of their own arrogance. This wasn't loud revenge. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was quiet, calculated, and complete. And it felt better than anything I'd ever done. It took almost 3 months of silence before Brenda resurfaced. The first message came late on a Thursday night, long after I'd stopped expecting anything from her. I need help. Derek left. I'm behind on rent. I just need a place to stay for a little while. Please. She went on for several paragraphs. How she was trying to start over. How her mental health had suffered. How being close to the ocean would help her reset. She even offered to help manage bookings for the property to repay me. I stared at the screen and shook my head. The only thing getting managed was the distance between us. 3 days later, the pressure campaign began. Mom called, her tone rehearsed and calm, asking me to be the bigger person. Dad sent a text reminding me that family takes care of each other. They all said the same thing: forget the past. Focus on healing. I responded with one message. No. Attached was a single PDF, 35 pages of everything they had done since the first text. The trespass affidavit. Screenshots of the fake Airbnb listing. The HOA violations. The attempted utility scam. The email to my boss. The towing report. The fireworks citation. The cease and desist letters. At the bottom of the final page was one line. When there is sustained accountability, we can revisit. Until then, my answer is no. It didn't go over well. Brenda switched tactics within hours. The messages swung from desperation to rage. You ruined my life. You won. Okay? Is that what you wanted? I'll sign an apology letter if you let me stay. I ignored them all. Apologies tied to conditions aren't apologies. They're negotiations. And I was done negotiating. A week later, my parents requested to meet. They promised Brenda wouldn't be there. Against my better judgment, I agreed, but only under strict conditions. Neutral ground. Public place. 1 hour. We met at a cafe in Raleigh, halfway between Charleston and their town. They looked older than I remembered. The stress was finally showing on their faces. Mom tried to open with small talk. I cut straight to business. I'm not here to rehash everything, I said. I'm here to set terms. They listened quietly as I laid them out like a contract. No more loans, not 1 cent. The beach house is by invitation only. If I say no, it's no. You do not contact my employer ever. And if Brenda wants to fix this, she starts by going to therapy, deleting every false post, and putting in writing what she did. There's no timeline. I make no promises. They exchanged a look. For once, there was no arguing, no deflection, no guilt trips. Just 2 exhausted people who finally seemed to understand the damage they'd allowed. Okay, Dad said. We'll talk to her. Mom nodded. We just don't want to lose you. I didn't say what I was thinking, that they should have worried about that before letting Brenda run wild for 36 years. But I let it sit. I'm not lost, I said finally. I just stopped playing along. They hugged me in the parking lot. Awkward, but at least it was something. A few weeks later, Brenda tried again. Please, just the weekend. I won't cause problems. I promise. I'm sorry for everything. The words were simple this time. No bargaining, no conditions. Just 2 sentences. I read them more than once, but didn't reply. I set the phone down and walked out onto the deck of the beach house. It was early morning, the kind of crisp, pale sunrise that makes the ocean look like glass. Down the shore, a family I didn't know was setting up beach chairs and a picnic blanket, their laughter carrying across the water. I opened the messages again, typed 2 words, not now, and saved them as a draft. Then I pocketed my phone and walked to the shore. The paddleboard slid into the water with barely a ripple. The wind was light, the ocean perfectly still. As I paddled toward the open water, I glanced back at the house. The cameras blinked steadily in the morning light. The locks were unchanged. The property was untouched. This was what victory looked like. It wasn't loud. It wasn't about police sirens or legal threats or dramatic confrontations. Victory was waking up in a place I had earned and built for myself. It was knowing I could say no and mean it. It was peace, the kind that couldn't be taken, borrowed, or guilt-tripped away. They had spent years treating me like a safety net, a resource, a guaranteed yes. They had learned slowly and painfully that those days were over. And maybe someday, if the apologies are real and the behavior changes, I'll consider letting them back into my life. But that choice will be mine, not theirs. The rest of it, the drama, the guilt, the manipulation, was just noise. And for the first time in my life, I couldn't hear a thing. I paddled further out, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The water was calm beneath me, stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Behind me, my beach house stood solid and secure on the shore, a testament to everything I'd built, everything I'd protected, and everything I'd refused to surrender. They'd wanted to take it from me. They'd tried every trick, every manipulation, every pressure tactic they knew. And they'd failed. Not because I was cruel. Not because I was heartless. But because I finally understood something it had taken me 42 years to learn. Boundaries aren't walls that keep love out. They're foundations that keep respect in. I turned the paddleboard parallel to the shore and let myself drift for a moment, suspended between the vast ocean and the solid ground I'd claimed as my own. For the first time in my life, I wasn't caught between what my family wanted and what I needed. I was exactly where I belonged. And that beach house, my beach house, would be there waiting whenever I decided to return. Not as a battlefield. Not as a prize to be claimed or stolen. But as exactly what it was always meant to be, a place of peace I'd earned entirely on my own. The sun climbed higher, warming my face. I took a deep breath of salt air and smiled. This was freedom. And it was worth every locked door, every difficult conversation, every moment of standing firm when it would have been easier to give in. I paddled back toward shore, toward my house, toward the life I'd built with my own two hands. And this time, no one was waiting to take it away. 6 months later, I received a letter in the mail. Not an email, not a text, an actual handwritten letter. It was from Brenda. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. The letter was 3 pages long. No excuses, no justifications. Just a detailed accounting of everything she'd done wrong, written in her own hand. She acknowledged the Airbnb listing, the attempted break-in, the lies online, the email to my boss. She admitted she'd been entitled, selfish, and completely out of line. At the end, she wrote, "I'm in therapy now. Not because you required it, but because I needed it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I finally understand what I put you through. I'm sorry." There was no request to visit. No plea for reconciliation. No conditions attached. Just an apology. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. Not in the evidence folder, somewhere separate. Somewhere that said, maybe someday, but not yet. Because healing takes time. And trust, once broken, isn't rebuilt with a single letter. But it was a start. And for now, that was enough. I walked out onto the deck one more time, coffee in hand, watching the morning light dance across the waves. My beach house. My rules. My peace. And finally, my family was beginning to understand what those boundaries meant. Not cruelty. Not rejection. Just the simple, powerful truth that I had learned to say no. And mean it. The ocean stretched out before me, endless and free. And so was I.